College football addictions, the power to. Good little transition there as I forgot the name of the show for half a second. Boys, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Thank you for remembering the name of the show. We appreciate it.
I'm ready to talk about how there is already chaos afoot in the world of college football, and that has nothing to do with Lane Kiffin. That has nothing to do with any of the coaching searches. Guys, there's a legit scenario where multiple 10-2 teams are still not good enough to make it to a 12-team college football playoff in 2025. Like, that's the world that we live in this upcoming year.
Well, that's why we got to go to 30. I mean, shout out Drinkowitz. Okay,
I hate all of you.
We had no plan to talk about this, but Cole, I didn't go fact check this. I didn't go verify this.
Sure.
But I saw a reel on Instagram, which makes it automatically true. And then I re-looked it up on Saturday night. Is it true that Eli Drinkowitz's Missouri Tigers have 0 wins against teams above 500 in the SEC in his 5 years at that program?
Don't fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's true.
We're going to talk about Lane Kiffin drama in a minute, so I don't want to jump way ahead. And we're not doing a whole drink segment, but I know that his name was kind of trendy as an option B, maybe for Florida. 0. I mean, we always talk about how easy their schedule is, so it doesn't really surprise me that this is the case. But 0 wins against, I probably should go fact check it because it's just 5 years. It's not like it's an insane amount of time.
It's not a majority thing, yeah.
But even if it's wrong, I might be wrong by a game or two. But this guy had the full spreadsheet out, and I didn't go through line by line and check every record of every SEC team. But that is worrisome. They were the only team in the last, I guess that would be 6 years because 2020 did count. They were the only team. Now they have wins. And there could be some wins against teams that, I think it was how they finished this season, right? So they could have wins against teams that were better and then maybe had an injury but anyway, finishing records, I don't know. I brought up Drinkowitz, and so I had to ask that quickly. Before I car us even further, Oklahoma just penciled a spot into the college football playoff. Now they could certainly erase that, but with a big win in Tuscaloosa, it is theirs to lose. I would expect that they are ranked no lower than 7th, 8th, when the committee gets together on Tuesday night. And we all talked about, could Oklahoma fall off a cliff and end up firing Venables after they lost to Texas? And now we're talking about is, can they just not screw up a CFP invite? Cole, they again finished with 200 less yards than their opponent on the road in the SEC and still win the game. And I loved what Venables said afterwards, when they asked about that specifically, no, defensive plays matter too. We go out and score, and if our defense will score and give us short fields or put the ball in the end zone, that still counts the same way. So yardage doesn't matter. Sorry to Tennessee and Alabama. They fall victim both to Oklahoma's just being nasty on that side of the ball. Bama was a turnover city. We'll talk about them later, but just overall in Oklahoma, less of a recap, just thoughts there on them.
Listen, they're 8 quarters away from guaranteeing their spot in the college football playoff. And I'll be completely honest, of all these 10-2 teams that we're kind of looking at of who deserves to be in the playoff, Oklahoma would have a resume, I think, good enough to guarantee its spot in. I mean, they have a win over Michigan, so already head-to-head, that would benefit them. They would have a win over Alabama on the road. They'd have a win in Neyland Stadium. They'd have a convincing loss to a playoff team in Ole Miss and another loss in a neutral site game that is truly the definition of a neutral site game because of its 50-50 down the middle in the Cotton Bowl every single year to Texas, where we've seen for years and years of past, just because if you're the better team long-term does not mean you're the better team on that Saturday. The beauty of what has been Oklahoma this year is, and I give a lot of credit to Brent Venables, he realized that his team was going to be facing a lot of scrutiny, and there's a potential opportunity to say, look, I may be fired if things don't go my way. So I'm going to run the defense. I'm going to go back to what works for me and not really care about what the outside noise is. If I'm going down the ship, I'm going down with it my way. And guys, it's the best defensive line in college football, in my opinion. It's arguably the best defense in the SEC. And it constantly is doing just enough to consistently make teams feel the pressure, make teams have to be underwhelmed, make teams have to feel flustered. And that is a massive deal, especially at the quarterback position. the way that I view Oklahoma right now, at least as a grand scheme of things, they're a team that is waiting for their Friday check to cash, and they are having to great value bargain bin eat meals from the grocery store because if that's the offense. They're coming up with enough recipes of ramen noodles and Vienna sausages to make it a 5-course dinner that is good enough to make you feel like that you're full, but just waiting for that opportunity to go ahead and cash in, to go ahead and get a big time payday. Like, that's what they're doing offensively. They're giving their defense enough time to catch its breath, go over some notes, and get right back out there to get critical stops. That's what they did when they faced off against Tennessee. That's what they did when they faced off against Alabama. And as long as they're able to slow down Ahmad Hardy, and as long as they're able to take down LSU in their backyard, both games at home, I might add in, they've earned a spot in the college football playoff. They're a team that consistently allows other opponents to make the mental errors, and they capitalize on it. Like, we can say that Alabama outplayed Oklahoma in a lot of ways, but what you can't say is Oklahoma had 3 opportunities on turnovers to get points. They scored on all 3 opportunities. Touchdown, pick 6, field goal. That just doesn't happen. If you are a good team, good teams know how to guarantee that they are at least capitalizing when they create those turnovers. And that's been the calling card all season for Oklahoma. If you doubt Oklahoma, that's on your own ill will. But I'm telling you right now that the way that their defense is built, as long as their offense isn't having a turnover field day, they can be in every single matchup. They are a pesky out for any team that has to go up against them in the college football playoff. They are. And again, they would have earned their way into the postseason conversation.
Tom, you have thoughts on Oklahoma? I'll let you go before I ramble too much more.
They're in a really good position, and it's something that's unfortunate that we've speculated about for a while now. Is it almost better to avoid your conference championship game? They're on the outside looking into that. It looks like, barring Texas A&M collapsing at Texas to end the season, that we're going to have Texas A&M and Georgia in the SEC championship game. I would expect Oklahoma to take care of business the rest of the way. I think the LSU game at the end of the season is going to be probably uncomfortable for a lot of Oklahoma fans. It feels like that could be a defensive struggle. Oklahoma's got all the makings of a souped-up Iowa of the SEC. It's pretty interesting to watch. Defensively, they're so sound, and I agree with everything Cole had said. The fact that Brent Venables is coaching for his job and just took over the defense, it shows. It shows, and they've done an excellent job with the recruiting side of things, the NIL side of things, to retain that talent on that side of the ball. Oklahoma, I think, is going to be in a good situation because, like I mentioned, if Texas A&M takes care of business against Texas at the end of the year, then you've got like Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt all on the outside looking in the SEC championship game, and this big grab bag of like, all right, which of these guys are going to make it into the college football playoff? And to the point that Cole just made, sorry, Vandy. Sorry. I mean, who do you leave out? Like Ole Miss or Bama? Which of those two drops off?
Well, you can't leave out Ole Miss because they're too high.
Yeah, unless they lose to Mississippi State.
And crazy things happen in the Egg Bowl, but it looks like that should go to the Rebels in the fighting Kiffins. But yeah, I don't know. I think Oklahoma just played themselves into the college football playoff, barring something catastrophic happening. But I do think LSU versus Oklahoma is going to kind of feel like the Alabama LSU games of the early 2000s, where it was like 10-6, and they called it the greatest match of the year or something like that. So
it was Oklahoma. 9-6.
I'm excited to see what this is.
Don't give those people an
9-6. Yeah, forgive me.
Don't give them an extra.
That drove me nuts. For years or last,
it was the greatest game ever played defensively. 9-6 final score.
At the same time, the worst offensive game of all time.
It was the greatest defensive execution.
Yeah, the offenses were great. They were just running a better defense.
Simultaneously in the NFL, we were getting Roethlisberger versus Flacco, Steelers versus Ravens, which was like the exact same thing. It'd be 10-9 or something, and you're like, "Why is this happening on both Saturdays and Sundays? I can't deal with this."
Cole, like their chances of, can Missouri or LSU offer any kind of, I don't know, barrier to them getting in, or is it?
I mean, guys, it's the SEC. We watched as a team that is 3-7 jump up by 28 points against the number 3 team in the SEC. I mean, like it can happen. happen. It can absolutely happen. The problem is that when you get up to that level, you best not miss on the knockout punch. If you do, then it's over. That's what this is, and that's what it's going to be. So Missouri just had a great game from Ahmad Hardy, who rushed for over 300 yards. I think he's well on his way to proving that he belongs in the Doak Walker conversation alongside Jeremiah Love. I think that LSU, again, there's something to play for them. If they can close out the year with a win over West Kentucky and a win over Oklahoma, they would be 8-4. So it's just like there's opportunities for them absolutely to drop the ball. But what you need to happen is the defense of Oklahoma has got to break. The dam has got to come on open, and it's got to let the floodgates just pile on in to the palace on the prairie. And at this point, the dam hasn't broken. Do you really think it's going to break now? Knowing what's at stake, knowing that if you just don't have the self-inflicting wounds, you have a defense good enough to lead you to the playoff, and also because if you're out of the running for Atlanta in the SEC championship, you can't get a third loss that would actually hurt your chances. Like that's where we're at this point. But anything's possible. I mean, Mizzou absolutely could go on in to Norman and get a win, especially if Bo Pabula, as reports are saying, he could be rushed back. I think it's a very dumb mistake to do so. But if you want to, I'm not a coach. My job's on the line. That's on you. I think that LSU can do the same thing. But I'll tell you what, I am not banking against the Sooners at this point. They've shown me too much defensively to believe that they're going to take a step back.
Yeah, it just feels like it'd be tough for either. I mean, again, it is the SEC and crazy things happen. Florida could have wins against Georgia and Ole Miss right now and still got boat raced by Kentucky. Like, it is just a crazy, like any given Saturday, right? Maybe this should be a movie. That'll be the Netflix next documentary. But it feels like a tall task if we've seen this team shut down Tennessee and Bama's offense or limit and then obviously score severely. Like, it feels like a tough task to ask LSU to overcome Oklahoma's offense and then either a banged up Pabula or Zeller. Like, it would be a lot, but we'll see. We may talk about that Oklahoma Missouri game, but I think we're all in agreement. Oklahoma, it's your college football playoff invite to either cash in on or mail right on back to the committee.
I thought this was a really interesting quote. I heard somebody say this earlier, that it was funny how the public eye, despite them having 2 losses, were the only people who uninvited them to the college football playoff party. Nobody else did, just the public. Yeah. And we all just kind of wrote them off for dead. And that's on us. Like that's our bad, is we should have known better. And credit, both Tennessee and Alabama outgained Oklahoma by 200 yards. Guys, at the end of the day, scoreboard. That's all they had.
Think about what you just said. They got outgained by 400 yards against 2 ranked teams in the SEC.
And like, still won.
If I would have told you that 3 weeks ago, you'd have said, yeah, Venables is getting fired. Like,
or at least changes.
400 yards on the road in the SEC against ranked opponents, and they won both of them. That's an insane thing to think about.
If that is not the state of college football this year, I don't know what is.
I
don't know what is.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, you get more hits and more, a better whip. Like, you're going to win a baseball game. Like, you have more shots on goal, you're going to win a hockey game. You have more shots, like football is just so dumb. And I mean, I love it.
Go full Iowa. Never resist the chance to go full Iowa. And good things will happen for you.
Gosh, that was frustrating to watch, but shout out to USC. All right, also dumb. Lane Kiffin still in Oxford this morning, despite some reports or thoughts or tweets that came out over the weekend. Ole Miss gets a win. They didn't look like killers there and certainly had some shaky moments, but Florida just went into full Florida mode and didn't score in the second half. So they escape the Lane Kiffin Bowl with a victory. And here it is Monday afternoon in the college football world, and they still have a coach as of now. Cole, I will once again lob this up to you.
It's really funny because of everyone thinks that they know what's going on with Lane. You're hearing sources say, well, Lane's already made up his mind that he's going to Florida. And then we see a report come out that Knox and the kids are viewing a school out in Gainesville. And then there's another report that says, no, he's in his office right now. We just saw him like 5 minutes ago. I don't know what you're talking about. And then there's another report that says the NFL wants him. Guys, I'm going to be completely real. I don't think anybody knows what Lane Kiffin's going to do. And I don't even know if Lane Kiffin knows what Lane Kiffin's going to do. Here's what I can tell you. Lane Kiffin has a lot of leverage. And people don't want to understand that. And I understand that there's a lot of frustration out in Oxford, Mississippi. There should be frustration out in Oxford, Mississippi. Lane's got a lot of leverage. He can say, I want A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. And these are non-negotiables. And Keith Carter can look it up and down and say, well, we're not doing that. Okay, Scott Strickland, your turn. Do you want to match this? Okay, you don't want to do that. Hey, Jeff Landry, let's have a little chit chat, buddy. I can deal with your politics if you go ahead and match all these things that I want. Oh, I hear that this guy out, Mr. Kraft out and Pat Kraft out in State College, Pennsylvania, he's really looking for a head coach that's going to knock us off our socks. Can you match these things? The New York Football Giants. You already got Jackson Dart for me. Can you match these things that I want? Tennessee Titans, number 1 overall pick. Maybe I can go reunite with Trinidad Chambliss, bring him on in. We trade away Cam Ward. Can you match this? He's got leverage. And that's kind of the beauty of what has been the Lane Kiffin story, is that a guy who at one point was left on a tarmac and called one of the biggest busts in college football history from a head coach perspective is now the most sought after man in the industry. I mean, that's what it is. And guys, when you have an ego the way that Lane does, and he knows that he's got you quite literally by the cojones, and he's able to twist and watch you squirm and also sing, he's going to do it. But you also have to reach a level of where there needs to be some understanding. You're in a bye week. You're going to the college football playoff. You're going to host a playoff game. Ole Miss is now a program that does believe it can win at the highest level. It does believe that they can bring in the right recruits. Names that would never consider them as a premier destination now do. And partially that's on Lane, but also partially that's on what they've been able to attribute to giving to Lane, to where now they're going to be able to swing big for whoever their next head coach is. And I think that there's a lot of good names out there that would look at Ole Miss and say, if you give me 80% of what you would give Lane, I'll go ahead and take the job tomorrow over another premier job in college football that currently is available. Because I'm watching as the transfer portal is bountiful out there. The scheduling has always been in our favor. The fan base is truly bought in. And I know what it takes to win. So I'll do the exact same thing as you. So Lane at some point has got to come to an agreement on what does he want. Is he happy at Ole Miss? And I don't know why he wouldn't be. They've given him everything that he's asked for, and they're going to give him more. And the other thing is that his legacy is going to be forever cemented if he sticks around. And that's got to mean something to people who have a big ego. Your name on this field, buildings named after you, you're the most popular name, whether it be a boy or a girl. For a boy, it's Lane. For a girl, it's Kiffin. For in the state of Mississippi, for kids. I mean, that's got to mean something to you. And you get to build a program that you've already checked off so many boxes at. Guys, Ole Miss, remember, this was a job that was viewed as it's a cool story, but it's an unwinnable team. They've had their first 10-win season underneath Lane Kiffin in the regular season. They've had their first 11-win season with the bowl game win over Penn State. Sorry for bringing that up, Tom. They're a game away from having their first 11-win regular season, and they're a game away from, no doubt about it, guaranteeing their spot in the college football playoff. And if there's a few more chaotic scenarios right now, Alabama losing, Texas A&M losing, and them winning, they're going to Atlanta for the first time and playing for an SEC title. So Lane's crossed off every single box, and there's more that he can accomplish there. But he's got to want it. But also, if you are a program like Ole Miss, at some point you got to say, shit or get off the pot. Buddy, we've given you everything that we can, and we can't keep doing this. We got to know going into Egg Bowl, are you going to be our head coach after this season? Better yet, are you going to be our head coach for the playoff? Because why are we going to sit around and wait for you just to go ahead and leave us whenever we're done? Do you even care at that point? Or are you already going and trying to build your roster for going over to Florida that's not even being bowl eligible this year?
I think there's a lot of things with Lane that are more off the field, outside of the building factors for him in this decision than there are on the field, in the building, that sort of stuff. He's been open about his sobriety, his family, how much they mean to him. And to the points that Cole just made, why would you leave a program that is giving you everything in terms of resources, contract, flexibility, comfort, period, when you'll make an incremental step up in brand notoriety and go to a Florida or an LSU, and all of a sudden there's a clock? We've talked about this before. He could stay at Ole Miss potentially for another 10 years, 20 years if he really felt like it. And there aren't that many examples of that anymore in modern day college football. I think the interesting thing, at least as it plays out for this season, Ole Miss looks like they should take care of business against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl, right? Then, depending on how things shake out, as of right now, based on the past college football playoff rankings from last week, they would draw Texas in the first round. You feel pretty good about Ole Miss beating Texas at home. It would be competitive. And then the winner of that game would move on to likely play Indiana. Indiana's not really been tested against anybody of that caliber. No disrespect to Oregon. I think Oregon is an outstanding football team, but I think what Ole Miss brings to the table is better. Ole Miss versus Indiana would be a shootout for the ages. And I could see Ole Miss winning that game. I could see Indiana winning that game. But what I can see is a situation where Ole Miss is in the semifinal, the Final Four of the college football playoff this year. I think that's very practical. And we'll have to see how things go the next few weeks and what those brackets ultimately end up looking like. But it does seem like there's going to be a path for Ole Miss to make it to the Final Four, whether they get to the national title, whether they win the national championship. I don't necessarily see that in the cards, but damn, that's a hell of an accomplishment for Ole Miss football to get to that point. So realistically, if he is going to drag this out, to Cole's point, we need an answer before the Egg Bowl. If I'm him, keep going, because the deeper this thing goes with Ole Miss in 2025 into 2026, the more desperate these other places are going to be to get you to sign on. They're going to continue to wait. The dominoes are going to continue to fall, that sort of thing. And he's going to have more and more leverage the more that Ole Miss wins. And they should. So if I'm Lane, sit tight.
Here's where I push back. At some point, Ole Miss has got to realize we're losing you. We can't afford to miss out on our premier coaching candidate. Because again, with all the jobs that are being open and all the other moves that are going on behind closed doors of, hey, this person's going to take this job, which means this job becomes available. What if there's a premier target that you really want? And again, Ole Miss, in my opinion, has, in the last 10 years, I think Ole Miss has gone from being a C-level program to a B-plus level program, if even in some eyes, an A-minus level program in the public. If there's a candidate that they really want, like let's say their top guy is John Summerall, and John Summerall's been rumored to go to Auburn. You can't just sit here and wait because of, Lane may or may not be going. Lane may or may not want to stick around with us, and he's eventually going to go to Florida, and our only guy that we feel comfortable leading the charge with this amount of money is John Summerall, and he's already signed on to Auburn. I mean, that's where you're at, and that's what makes this so convoluting. And the other part is, this isn't like Kalen DeBoer and Nick Saban. Like, would you potentially take the Alabama job if it became available because Nick's now retiring? Like, it was a 4-team college football playoff, and Nick let it be known he was done the week of the national championship, or like right around that time period. So this job's been open for over a month. Lane's had conversations for over a month. Lane's had people be in contact with him for over a month. You're going into a rivalry game where you could have the best season in program history. Dude, enough with the mind games. Like, I get it. You have the leverage to get what you want, but you know what your answer is at some point. It can't just keep getting better. Like, at some level, you give all you got. It's like chasing the hot chick and saying, well, if I give her flowers, and then if I give her chocolates, then if I give her a diamond necklace, and then if I kill my dog in front of her doorstep as a sacrifice, lo and behold, here we go. Is that enough for you? It's like at some point you hit a wall. And I think Ole Miss is getting there. Like, again, he said after the game, well, think about this. It's disrespectful to our players to have these type of conversations. No, it's disrespectful that they don't know if their coach is going to be here for the playoff game. It's disrespectful to know if their coach is not going to be around next season when they're trying to go ahead and figure out what their plans are. It's disrespectful to say, look at all that you've accomplished, and the team that we just beat, we came back to beat for you, you're going to join them. That's disrespectful. And I understand the frustration from an Ole Miss side of things. I also understand that Lane Kiffin has been Lane Kiffin for the last 48 years of his life. He ain't changing. This is who he is. You better accept it.
Yeah, you got to reap the benefits of Ole Miss, of Lane Kiffin. Knowing the risk, like you knew what you signed up for, right? You go get with a drug addict. That's maybe a terrible comparison to make, but you go get with, you know what you sign up for, right? If that's your spouse or, so But I do feel for the Ole Miss fans as somebody who Jimbo did this too every single offseason with LSU. I've been there. I get it. And there were not many FSU fans that were sad the day that Jimbo left, because every single year, if you're going to flirt with another program, and I'm not saying Lane's done it every year, but I get it. I was in this situation. We got a comment from Rock and Roll. Jimmy Sexton special. It felt like, and we'll get to Franklin here in a second too, because I think this is a very similar situation. And for all those watching live, we really do appreciate you guys tuning in live. Some of our lives do really well, some don't. I know the Lane drama is exciting. We will probably talk about Lane on every episode until he signs somewhere, and then we may keep doing it if
we're
that's
going to keep doing it. We're going to be talking about roster construction.
But so hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I don't typically do that mid-segment, but if you're not already subscribed to the channel, we certainly would appreciate it, and we love all the comments. But yeah, Jimmy Sexton special. The leverage play here is so insane, and I agree with Cole. Like, I think that's why if you're Ole Miss, you got to finally say, like, man, we want you here. We want you here next year. We don't want to piss it away. But at the same time, you know, the further this gets, the more it feels like we're being used for leverage. And he may end up staying. He may be using LSU for leverage and Florida for leverage and just every option that's out there. But it also still just feels like you do got to get to a point where you're like, man, enough is enough. You know, crap or get off the pot, whatever euphemism you want to use. But on LSU specifically, Cole, because it's all Florida Ole Miss from all the talking points.
If you're talking about Lane with Lane, LSU is not happening.
No chance. It doesn't, because it just, like, would it really shock you if they weren't just the quiet on the back burner that ends up being like the team that comes to the forefront? I still would pick Florida right now, and I would pick Ole Miss like as my second option. But like, with how dumb we talk about this sport being, would it shock anybody if they just come out of left field and do something crazy and pick him up? Like, my answer is yes, it would shock me a little bit, but it wouldn't be a top 10 crazy thing we've seen this season.
Here's why it wouldn't shock me. Because if they say to, they tell him, here's the deal. We're going to let you coach all the way into the playoff, and you don't have to tell anybody. Where Florida says we need an answer, where Ole Miss says we need an answer, LSU quietly has reached out to Jimmy Sexton and said, the offer stands until you're done. Like, you can tell everybody, yeah, we got it under control, we're getting a contract done. It would be the crappiest thing that Lane has ever done to a program, especially one that he has helped build. But that'd be the only way I think that he goes to LSU, is they say, we will give you everything that you want, and we will let you go coach the college football playoff, and we will not say a damn thing. That's it. That's the only way at this point. Because they also have too many other fish to fry right now in different levels of figuring out their athletic department, figuring out this buyout conversation that's going on with Ryan Kelly. Your former head coach is going to court, and people are looking at this situation. The problem is that the same people that are looking at this situation saying, good God, like, who wants this job? Almost every coach in America that truly understands what it takes to win at a place like LSU, they want that job. It's not at the same level of ambiance as Alabama, but knowing what you can build down there, it's at the same level of respect as Alabama.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the other one for just a moment. Some similar thoughts here. Obviously, Pete Thamel comes out with the information this weekend that James Franklin and Virginia Tech are deep into negotiations, and we very much could get an announcement on that at some point. We also may not. But this 1000% to me, and I could be biased, felt like a leverage play to try and get Franklin a bigger job. Like, yeah. I hate it for the Virginia Tech folks. I get it. But if we're just being honest with the status of that program versus three very large SEC programs, another pretty large ACC program that is not open right now, which we can talk about in a minute, this felt like, hey, guys, we're about to sign, so anybody else want to take me to the prom? And as of today, obviously Franklin has not signed as of at least the time we're live right now, unless a tweet has come through. Tom, I'll start with you because I've let Cole go a ton on this other one. And being the Penn State guy, I think this makes a lot of sense. Just thoughts on the Franklin situation and what's going down.
I was tweeting about this when Thamel put this out. By the way, credit to Pablo Torre, who's posed the question publicly of like, how much is this really like a source told me? Or is it like, hey, Pete, print this? Like, let's just be honest about the quote unquote journalists and insiders. Um, there's a couple things here. Franklin has a tremendous ego. He believes that because of the job that he did at Penn State, which was good, we will give him that he deserves or that he is the caliber of a top level college football job. And some believe that and some don't. I do not think that the LSU or Florida fan bases would be excited by James Franklin because they have put it out there that they want to win national titles. They have recently won national titles. Auburn fans, we've talked about that before here on this podcast. You can claim a national championship from whatever era you want. The year with Cam Newton was spectacular, but an anomaly. I think that is a hard pill for Auburn fans to swallow. So you are not on the same level as Florida or LSU, but still an incredibly desirable job. Then there's the element about Florida State, which, TJ, if I'm correct, your AD has said we're keeping Mike Norvell into 2026. Am I correct on that?
Well, evaluate at the end of the year.
And
They
evaluate at the end of the year.
They haven't. Which my quick thoughts are on that. If they win these next two games against NC State and Florida, I think they will keep him. 6-6 is a question mark. 5-7, they'll fire him. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
I agree with that. So to that point, Franklin believes he should be in that LSU, Florida State category. The irony is that for all of his success at Penn State, none of those programs, Florida State maybe just because it's been so dismal the last few years, would love to get back to the point where it's like, let's just be competitive. And it depends on your level of desperation and it depends on your level of expectations. Because I don't know if the Florida State fan base really expects to compete for the national championship tomorrow. Maybe they do. And TJ, you can answer that in a minute. But my thought on this overall is that Virginia Tech's a really good fit for James Franklin. It really is. It's been suspected for a while this could be the move. Some people have said, well, Brent Pry was just there and he's a Franklin disciple. Why would they double that up? Franklin is a DMV guy. He has outstanding connections in that part of the country, and he's obviously been able to recruit nationally since being at Penn State. That's a program that isn't expecting anything significant. They just want to get back to a point of being respectable. James Franklin's great for that. If you would like to be a respectable, competitive program, James Franklin is your guy. He's also going to want top 5 money as a coach. Deservedly so. But at the same time, what are you paying for? LSU, Florida, and I think to a degree, Florida State should reasonably look at James Franklin and say, you have proven for multiple decades that you can win some, but you can't win the big one. Why the hell would we do this? It doesn't make sense to me for LSU. It doesn't make sense to me for Florida, a little bit for Florida State. But yes, this very much read as Virginia Tech saying, put a ring on it or get the hell out of my house. Because and Arkansas, Cole, I'd love to get your points on this. I don't think James Franklin makes sense at Arkansas because I don't think he fits. I know he coached in Nashville at Vanderbilt and had success there, but like the irony is that the guy who coached at Vanderbilt many years ago is a completely different product and has a completely different perception now in the modern era, the NIL era, the transfer era, of course. Transfer portal era of college football that James Franklin to me does not feel like an SEC head coach. ACC, I know he thinks that's lateral or a step down depending on what the size of the program is. But after the job he did at Penn State, you might need to take that step down. And James Franklin's ego is not going to allow him to do that.
I'll be completely real. But I realized when that report came out by Pete Thamel, my first intuition was, hey, Pete's basically telling Florida State, fire Mike Norvell and hire me, or he's going to take the job at Virginia Tech.
Yes.
That was where my brain went.
100%.
So it's like he's settling for Virginia Tech because if he realizes that he can't get the job that he really wants. Here's the beauty of going to a place like Virginia Tech. Number one, the buy-in from the fan base is always there, which means that if you start to prove results are actually trending upward in 2 years, You will get more buy-in in terms of revenue distribution, NIL funds, and you can turn that program in a very winnable conference year in and year out to a sustainable level where you're going to be talked about as a legit threat to go to the playoff every single year. Because we're going to expand to 14 teams, and then we're going to get to 16, and eventually we'll get to 24. And Eli Drinkowitz's comments will be very stupid at that point. Because it does truly mean at this point, if you didn't make the playoffs, it was a failed season because you probably didn't belong. If you can't make it into the 24, it's not a good year. But regardless, here's the other thing that can happen. If he ends up doing really well at Virginia Tech and rewrites the way that he has gone about coaching and turned a program that has been very prideful, but not been able to get over the hump of really sustainability since Frank Beamer retired, eventually another school is going to come calling. Eventually, Florida State will make that offer, or a team like Notre Dame, if Marcus Freeman were to leave, or potentially a team like Michigan will look at him. And ultimately, they'll buy themselves into the idea that he's learned from the error of his ways, and we can bring him on back to the school. So it's a lateral move for the short term that could eventually lead to long-term sustainability where he wants to go. I don't hate it. I think it actually would be a really good fit for him to go to Virginia Tech, a program where there's realistic expectations that he could easily accomplish, and kind of remind everybody that while he's somewhat of an overrated coach in the terms of we're supposed to be winning national championships and be at the forefront of all conversations of Big Ten titles, I still can win a lot of football games, and I still can be able to put our team in a position to where we're always viewed in a successful light. And so I think that that's a good thing. And if you keep winning, guess what? Winning solves a lot of problems and a lot of narratives about who you are as a person. But I agree with Tom. I think that he looks at Arkansas as a step-down job. I don't think that anywhere else in the SEC is really going after him. I think that basically Thamel was like, hey, Florida State, this is your last chance. You can either wait things out. And I think Virginia Tech is telling the exact same thing, the way that I think that you got to look at Keith Carter for Lane Kiffin. Dude, this is your last chance. Like, we can do this song and dance for as long as you want. But at some point, I got Bob Chesney on line too. And he really wants to be here. I got two other defense coordinators that I got Glenn Schumann on line 3, who says he thinks that he can fix this program. I got Eric Morris, who's about ready to lead the Mean Green to the college football playoff, ready to go ahead and take the job up in Blacksburg. Time to make a decision. Wait it on out for Florida State, whatever they want to do, and don't get hired this year, or come take a job where we're going to give you everything that you need.
It's a gamble with all of these coaches. I mean, Lane is gambling right now with a lot of things. Now he has more leverage and better opportunities. Franklin's gambling too. On the Florida State thing, a couple of thoughts. I have been told that Florida State's athletic director is not necessarily in the Franklin camp. Don't take that as gospel, just kind of what I've been told. Other people tell me that people that I certainly trust tell me that Florida State's athletic director may or not be heading this thing up. I don't know that it's quite an LSU situation, but it has shades of that. On the Florida State fan base, which Tom was alluding to, I agree with that. I don't think that they look at James Franklin as somebody that is going to come in and immediately start competing for national titles. I do think they view Franklin as somebody that can come in and, just like Virginia Tech and more so, compete for ACC titles pretty quickly. And I also think, whether they're right or wrong, Florida State fans would view Franklin as having a higher ceiling at Florida State due to the recruiting territory and the conference than he had at Penn State. I'm not saying that Florida State is a better, I'm not trying to upset the Penn State folks. I'm not trying to say that Florida State's a better or worse job. I do think that some advantages in Tallahassee would maybe help him there. But I do think Florida State fans are very well aware. And so they are split. Like, Florida State fans want, Nick Saban number 2 to walk through the door. Well, there could be a Nick Saban number 2 out there, but who the hell knows who that is, right? And maybe Saban's a terrible comparison, but a Lanning or a Kirby or a Sark or something like that. And I don't know who that guy is. And anyone that's not Franklin is obviously a coin flip on whether or not they come in and do that. But Franklin has a relatively high floor. I don't think you're losing more than 3 or 4 games a year with him. And most years 3 to 4 would probably be your absolute max. So we will see. I think Florida State's game in Raleigh means a lot this week. If they were to drop it, if they were to win it, I don't know how much stock you put into wins against Wake Forest or a Virginia Tech team that's awful and got blown out by Old Dominion, or an NC State team that just lost by $1 billion to Miami this week. But if you're FSU's AD and administration, maybe it is something you can sell by beating a bunch of teams that have quit and suck. So
can I ask you guys something? Who's the name right now that needs to garner more attention in this head coaching search? Just genuinely asking if you guys have anybody out there that you're looking at
that needs to get more attention for which job in particular?
Just any at this point.
Just overall?
Yeah.
I like the Glenn Schumann take that you had. Yeah. Like I like him as a recruiter, and I like Georgia, and I think maybe he is getting more, and I'm just not seeing it because we're so inundated with trying to fix problem A in Tallahassee before we get to problem B. But firing Mike before hiring someone else. But I do like the Schumann take a lot.
I don't think for Florida State this name would be really popular. But if I were Virginia Tech, I'd call Jim Mora Jr. What he's been able to accomplish at a place like UCLA early on in his career, and now what he's doing at UConn, I think a lot of people forget that there's probably no way that they can make the playoff, but they're going to have back-to-back 9-win seasons and potentially an 11-win season. That screams almost incredible volume with the resources that he has at a place like that. Imagine just giving him a little bit more and knowing that he'd be able to kind of turn a program's image around. We are not talking about him enough, I think, for a coach candidate this year.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of G.J. Kinney. I know, things can be up and down with Texas State, but they did just jump conferences, and he has the benefit of being in South Texas. So that's a good recruiting ground for him. But my last thought here on Franklin, if he doesn't land at Florida State, Florida, or LSU, do not be shocked if he takes a TV job.
Oh, I think he will.
James Franklin holds grudges. He has an ego. I think now he wants to stick it to Penn State and win a national championship somewhere, but perception and image are very important to him. So if it's Virginia Tech or Arkansas, and those are his options, I wouldn't be shocked if he spends a year at the worldwide leader.
I do not think he will take any other job outside of Virginia Tech or Florida State. That's it. If he does not take one of them, he is not taking a job in college football this year.
Let's move on to the college football playoff. Again, if you're watching this, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate all of those in the comments and watching with us live. If you're on X or Twitter, you can go over to the YouTube so we can see your comments, and we would certainly appreciate that. Just search for The Power 2 here on College Football Addiction's YouTube channel. College football playoff, a little bit more solidified, but still just a ton of chaos that can happen. Cole talked about this with how many 10-win teams we could end up with. What the heck do we do if Oregon drops to USC and they're both 10-2? What do we do if Michigan goes and upsets number 1 Ohio State and they finish 10-2? What do we do with Vandy if they're 10-2? What do we do? Oklahoma is going to be right there. Alabama is right there at 10-2 at this point. Feels like there are some teams, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M that have rubber stamped their status. You still have the Notre Dame Miami situation going on. If Miami looks better down the stretch, do they still kind of creep up? What do we do with BYU if they drop their second game in the Big 12 championship? There's not been an insane amount of chaos with this many 10-win teams still left remaining, and I think multiple 10-win teams that could get left out of this thing, but there could be chaos these last 2 weeks. And if there's not, we'll get it on Selection Sunday. So Cole, Tom, I don't even care who goes here, but let's talk about it.
I think that the main thing that we're not paying attention to is the Big 12 could have multiple 11-win teams and one of them be left on out. Okay, so one name that has not been thrown around enough, I'm going to throw it in here at this point. I think Texas Tech is a lot to go to the playoff. Now, anything is possible, but they have to close out the season after a bye week against West Virginia, a West Virginia team that's not going to be bowl eligible. And if they do that, they're 11-1. I do not see a scenario where you drop an 11-1 team going into Arlington out of the college football playoff race. So, bearing a complete and total collapse against West Virginia, you're in the playoffs. That's another spot. BYU is really interesting. And this is where I think the playoff committee rankings are going to have such a major deal for teams in their pathway to the postseason. You got to be in a certain spot before you can kind of determine if you are in or out of the conversation 10-2. Because if BYU is dropped outside the top 12 and they're at, say, like 14 or 15 for some reason, it's going to be a lot harder for them to kind of climb on in. Let's say it's Utah and they're at number 17. It's going to be a lot harder for them to climb on in. What if Utah at 10-2 is at number 12? What if BYU at 10-2, or at 11-1 is number 9? Are you going to drop them out that far for losing a game that wasn't promised to them? And are you going to reward a team that won the head-to-head that wasn't the Holy War? You're going to let them come in because they didn't have to play in Arlington? So seeding is going to be a really big deal. In the SEC, if you look currently, Vanderbilt still has to face off against Tennessee and Kentucky. That Kentucky game is now a little bit more challenging for how well Kentucky's offense has looked the last 3 weeks. Oklahoma still has to face off against Missouri and LSU. They cannot afford to lose a game. And let's also just throw this out there. Alabama at Jordan-Hare is completely different than Alabama at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That is not a guaranteed win. It just isn't. I don't really care what anybody has to say. I've lived through it. I've seen some of the biggest upsets in college football history occur on that field. Don't tell me for 1 second that Auburn can't get the job done and knock Alabama out of the playoff conversation. So that's just in those conferences. We know it's a one-bid league probably for the ACC, but what if Miami runs the table, they're 10-2, and they're at number 11, and they're not, and the ACC winner still has to go, but they're not going to get punished because they're in a good spot. And then you got to look at the Big Ten. If Oregon loses this weekend and USC runs the table with wins over the Ducks and over UCLA, they're at 10-2. And here's the crazy thing, boys. If Ohio State loses to Michigan, guess who's going to Indianapolis to face off against Indiana? Not Ohio State. Because if every team would have one conference loss, and who would be the common opponent? Michigan beating Ohio State, but USC beating Michigan would send USC to Indianapolis. So are you really going to leave out USC at this standpoint for going and playing a game that wasn't promised? And are you rewarding a team like Michigan to get on in who, yes, they beat Ohio State, but also they lost to Oklahoma, who's at 10-2, and they lost to USC that's playing in a conference championship weekend. Can you put them on in? Notre Dame at 10-2. There's a lot of things that are just going crazy this year that absolutely could cause so much chaos in the next 14 days that says, hey, we think we know who the 12 teams are. No, you don't. You know who 5 teams are. And the other 7 are wide open. Not to mention James Madison and North Texas collusion that's going on in the G5 level.
The ACC one feels the weirdest. And we've felt that for a while, but like you kind of know what you're going to get with the SEC and the Big Ten, at least if it's 4-4, like you have a pretty good feeling on that one. The ACC is strange. And to quote Pat Narduzzi, it just matters what you win in conference, in that we very well could have Georgia Tech versus Virginia for the ACC championship game. And I've said it a lot this season. I do think this will be the case, is that I think given all of the conference realignment from the offseason that we heard about, I think there will be a feeling within the committee to give something to legitimize the ACC and the Big 12. Like everybody's saying, like, okay, neither conference is going to get anybody in. I think at the very least, you'll see the conference champions get in. And then if it's really difficult to justify Virginia, who would have, 3 losses at that point, if they were to lose to, say, Georgia Tech in the ACC championship game, then it's like Miami's going to be holding their dick and just sitting there in the wind. It's like, yeah, you're higher ranked, which is bizarre to me in the grand scheme of things. The ranking system is flawed, and that's a whole other discussion for another day. But I don't see anybody beyond the ACC and Big 12 conference champions gaining access to the playoff. It just feels like, yes, there are going to be those teams on the outside looking in, but not everybody can play. Sorry.
Listen, I hate to do this, but we've talked about Miami before. And it still feels like, unless the committee kind of reverts from what they've done the last 2 weeks, it feels like they need help to get there. And I still don't know how okay I am with that. Because when you look at some of the 10-2 teams around them, and all we have is eye tests and all these things, listen, boy, this will upset some folks. When I look at the way that Alabama's played in their last 3 games, including a loss. And then I look at Alabama's common opponent with Miami being Florida State. And then I look at the head-to-head with Notre Dame. It rubs me the wrong way that Miami is not, and I understand the concept of good losses for Notre Dame and Alabama, but it does rub me the wrong way that they're not getting that same consideration. Now, personally, I would love nothing more than Miami to get left out at 10-2, but I just don't love where we're at, where we forgive some things, we don't honor other things. Early games don't matter. Notre Dame gets a pass because it was their quarterback's first game, like Beck wasn't coming off of surgery, and it was his first game in Miami too, where Bama gets the pass for Florida State because it was Simpson's first game, like it wasn't Castellanos who got benched first game too. And I am not as comfortable with Miami being written off the way that they are from a sports standpoint, obviously. I think they should have every argument that the other teams do, especially if our standard for Notre Dame was, well, they're playing better right now. Well, if Miami goes on to win out on a 5-game winning streak against virtually the same kind of competition that Notre Dame's been playing, the same Pitt team that Notre Dame just played, and a game that Pitt Narduzzi has said means more. The Miami game means more to Pittsburgh than the Notre Dame game does. If Miami's able to go on the road and win that game in maybe more convincing fashion than Notre Dame, I don't know. Maybe Miami may trip this weekend at Virginia Tech. I doubt it, but who knows? I do think that is something that is not being talked about enough, and we'll see if the committee does anything differently. I would be pretty surprised if all of a sudden, because there's been fan outrage, that they just vault Miami up. But I do think that they're a team that should be in these discussions, and who knows, man, maybe Georgia Tech loses to Pitt this weekend and Miami beats Pitt the next weekend and they go to Charlotte and can play their way in. With the ACC, that is not out of the realm of possibilities. But I do think that they're a team that is not getting the respect they should because they lost to a Louisville team that matched up really well. And I know Louisville has floundered here down the stretch. And an SMU team that has one ACC loss in 2 seasons. So I don't know. I think they're something that I'm looking at, and I'm open to hearing you guys' thoughts on them.
Cole?
Oh, I don't want to be rude and just continue to talk over people. My bad. Look, you could just make it an easy scenario on this standpoint too. And a lot of people are not going to like this one at all. Miami doesn't get in, Notre Dame doesn't get in. You lost the head-to-head. You don't play in a conference schedule, and we're going to reward teams for playing conference schedule games. It's not fair. It's not right. But if one team is not going to be a conference champion and they're being left out, why not say the exact same thing about Notre Dame?
I don't think Notre Dame has a better argument to be in than Miami. Like I just don't.
Here's
with the head-to-head, I just don't think Notre Dame has. I think Miami has a more impressive. I don't know if resume is the right word, but like when head-to-head is included in it, I think that has to mean something.
Cole, I'll say this, and I want to hear what you have to say. If Notre Dame finishes this season, will they be 10-2? Is what we're projecting
on a 10-game win streak,
and they're kept out of the college football playoff. That's not just you're not playing in conferences. That's a message from the entirety of the sport attempting to put pressure on Notre Dame to join a conference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody in that committee is prepared to make that stance. I really don't.
Oh, they're not.
Because Notre Dame, I have said this before, is the most powerful team in college football because they're not in a conference, because they have tens of millions more than every other team, because they take all the TV revenue as opposed to breaking it up within a conference. They are in a position where they're the preeminent power, regardless of what the record is on the field. I think it'd be a massive statement by the committee to not include them at 10-2.
But at the same time, it just would show that if we're going to throw them in and we're going to leave out an 11-1 Big 12 team, or we're going to leave out a couple of teams from the ACC that actually had to play one more battle than what you had, or better yet, even a Vanderbilt team that was able to win multiple games against then top 10 opponents. Because whether or not you want to say that they are top 10 opponents, it's fair to argue and criticize. But when they were ranked, it says that it's a beauty competition. Because let's be real. If BYU is 11-1 and they go to Arlington and they lose that game, they're 11-2. Are we really going to leave them out because of, oh, they don't have a good enough win, or what? What is it? No, it's because of they're not Notre Dame and they don't have the revenue and they don't have the branding and this is a television product. That's what it is. And that's what you're telling everybody. That's clearly what you're doing. If Vanderbilt gets a win on the road against Tennessee and they put them in a position where you say to yourself, well, hey, hang on. They also were able to beat LSU and they also were able to beat Missouri, and they finished with a better record than other teams around them. And what's their most impressive win versus what is Notre Dame's most impressive win? Then at that point, it's just like, okay, well, one's a pretty logo and one has a logo. Cool, we're sending one in. But that's the big thing, is that like you just want to make sure that Miami isn't rewarded for losing 2 bad games. Don't reward them by not putting them in the playoff. Just also reward them by saying the head-to-heads have to matter, so we're taking Notre Dame out of the playoff because they didn't win the head-to-head. And that's where we're in this collusion in this standpoint. We're just clear as day, Miami, find a way to lose to somebody. Like, just do that, and then we're 9-3, and this argument can be a moot point.
Right.
I think that it gets so convoluted when you're comparing good losses for this team and good losses for this team and brand for this team and conference for this team, that it is an impossible task. I mean, if we end up with, like we just said, 10-2, Alabama and Vandy and Miami and BYU and BYU be 11-2 and Notre Dame and all this stuff. I mean, it just really makes it tough to think that brand just isn't the ultimate trump card.
I mean,
it's tough.
It is.
Not to be rude, but like also Utah, throw them in here. Utah lost the 2 best teams in the Big 12 and they beat the shit out of everybody else. Okay, but they're not good enough to be in the conversation. They're Utah. Screw them.
What's the separator between Notre Dame and Utah? I mean, it's the shiny gold helmet. Let's be honest. Utah has 2 great losses.
Yeah, just like Notre Dame does. And by the way, this is not me saying that Notre Dame doesn't belong in the play. Notre Dame is playing phenomenal right now, and I got to give credit for credit's due. They are. I'm just throwing this out here because that's where we are. I'll tell you who's the biggest winner of all of this right now. College football playoff expansionist models. They are the biggest winner because they're seeing this argument going on and saying, see what's going to happen soon? People are going to get pissed off. People are going to be upset that we didn't put their team in this year. Look at how many 10-win teams. We got to go to 16. There's their argument. It just was proven. And it sucks if you love college football the way that I do. But they're going to win that argument.
Well, us expansion deniers will say the inverse matters. Like all these 10-2 teams should just be out.
Exactly. I would say.
That is that's my hill to die on today. Yeah, listen, I mean, I don't know what'll happen. I don't think that Notre Dame does get left out. I don't think there's any realistic possibility of that unless they lose another game. But I do think that we'll see. Yeah, Miami will lose to Pitt and make this whole argument that I just argued for. I started giving Miami love and they dropped 2 ACC games. So yeah, maybe they'll just lose to Pitt since I've said all of this and it'll be irrelevant. But it is pretty wild to see. Let me quickly, before we go on too much farther, just give Sleeper some love. We will play the more or less game on, Wednesday at noon. Pick a bunch of games. Make sure you use our code CFA for 100% match up to $100 over on the Sleeper app. We appreciate them for their support all season. Terms and conditions do apply, so check their terms of use for details. We are going to rapid fire the SEC and just quick thoughts on some of their top teams. We'll start with the highest rated SEC team, highest ranked SEC team right now. Cole, A&M survives. Again, we're doing like 4 or 5 teams here, so we'll try and be quick on it and get you guys out at a relatively good time. But A&M gets credit for the comeback, but also a lot of concern for the way they played in the first half, or what?
I still think you got to give a lot of credit for the way they were able to come back because of most teams of the past, underneath Kevin Sumlin, Mike Sherman, Jimbo Fisher specifically, would have laid down and died. They may have given up a touchdown. I mean, they may have gotten a touchdown, but they would have given up a touchdown in the process. Culture has drastically changed underneath Mike Elko in 2 years. They're a playoff-bound roster. Marcel Reed had to create it, but he found his Heisman moment with 4 straight scoring drives in the second half. At the same time, we can talk about the complete and total implosion from Shane Beamer, where if this was a year that there weren't premier jobs available, I don't think that he is having a employment or his key card working to get into the building on Monday morning.
Texas A&M, They showed resolve. Honestly, that's the thing that we look at with some of these juggernauts. Every single year, there's 1 or 2 wins that you're a little like, oh, that was a little worrisome right there. Credit to Texas A&M, the way that they hung in there. They dug themselves a pretty deep hole there in the first half, but I don't know how many teams exist in college football that could pull something off like that. But Texas A&M and Georgia, I think if anything, the game for Texas A&M against South Carolina to me illuminated the very real situation that Georgia and Texas A&M are eerily identical. And one I think is trending up in the right direction faster than the other. And I think it's Georgia.
I will go to Georgia since that's where Tom just left off. If I was doing a power rating, they would be number 1 in the SEC right now. And I don't mean to discredit A&M for that, but the way that they looked against Texas and the way that their offense, I mean, I know it was Mississippi State, but really what they've done since the second half of that Florida game and then beyond, I really like the way that Gunner is playing right now. I like that they're starting to develop a bit of an edge rush. I like the way their offensive line played against a really good Texas front. I really am impressed with Georgia. It would not shock me at all if they go on a pretty big run here. They may even get the bye week, the first week in December, to where they don't have to play in Atlanta and then get to host a home playoff game after that. So Georgia is super impressive. The way that they were able to dominate Texas was great, and I love the onside kick. So shout out to Kirby.
I don't live in a world of hypotheticals, therefore I'll leave Texas A&M at number 1. But the way that they're playing, I think that Georgia is the second best team in the country, not in the SEC, in the country. They have looked so polished, so poised. And you know what's really funny, guys? There was a graphic that made its way around a couple of weeks ago talking about how Gunnar Stockton had 5 incompletions and 5 total touchdowns against a top 10 team. Guys, he did that again on Saturday. 5 incompletions, 5 total touchdowns against a top 10 team in Texas. Like, they are rolling at the right time. And I'll tell you what this team reminds me of. It reminds me of Ohio State right before they faced off against Tennessee in the college football playoff. The second that they got on a run, the only way that you were stopping them is if they stopped themselves. They didn't stop themselves. They had no self-inflicted wounds. It was clear as day that they were en route to winning a national title. I think Georgia's built the exact same way.
Let's go to a team that lost this weekend. Alabama. Are they in trouble at all, Cole? I mean, the trip to Jordan-Hare coming up. Saw some of this conversation with just being 10-2. Certainly, they just got jumped by Oklahoma due to that head-to-head if the committee wants to consider it, at least in that matchup. Thoughts on Bama?
Alabama, whether or not we talk about it being a Jordan-Hare, is the more superior team than Auburn. Should just show it. I mean, like, that's what you have to do. You can't leave this up to the committee should let us in because we had 4 ranked wins in a row. Oh, the committee should let us in because we did. Just go out, be 10-2, have signature wins, 1 really, really, really bad loss, 1 loss to a team that maybe is destined to go to the college football playoff, and rewrite the ship. But here's what I will say. I have been high and I've never sold my stock on Alabama being a national title contender. I'm selling my stock on Alabama being a title contender this year. You cannot be a one-dimensional offense for this long and just get away with it. And Alabama has not been able to run the football efficiently at all this year. Alabama has not been able to win its one-on-one battles in the trenches. Alabama has given up far too many bad, ill-advised turnovers at the worst time possible, and it's led to teams hanging around far too close for comfort. Eventually, that will get got in the playoffs. I still think they're a playoff team. I still think that they are a top 8 roster in college football. But again, you got to go out and show it, and nobody cares about what you were or what happened to you on Saturday. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you when you're sitting at home at 9-3 for a second straight year.
I think they will get out of the first round of the college football playoff, and that would likely be about it. But that's not a bad thing. I think to all of the Alabama fans who are expecting the world immediately with Kalen DeBoer, you should be very encouraged by what he has been able to do in year 1 and year 2. After Nick Saban, it was inevitable there was going to be an exodus when Saban left. He had to right the ship last year. Was it pretty? Absolutely not by Alabama standards. You've seen the incremental progress. And for them to be in a situation where they potentially end this season in the second round of the college football playoff, you're in good hands. You're doing just fine. I know you're upset about what just happened against Oklahoma, but you're getting there. And once DeBoer gets his system, his people in the way that he wants it, this is going to feel like Alabama again.
Texas. Is there any way? You heard Herb Street, if I could stop stuttering over my own words. You heard Herb Street trying to say that 9-3 Texas could get in. I just don't see it unless there's an insane amount of chaos these last 2 weeks. But it feels like Texas is going to come up short here.
Jesus.
Herb Street said a lot of dumb shit this weekend. So,
well, don't just limit it to this weekend, but go on.
I'm sorry. I can't. I can't with Texas fans continuously trying to come up with salute. No, guys, it's not even about the fact that you could go 9-3 and have signature wins. You got embarrassed. You got fully embarrassed on national television. People are like, I heard Steve Sarkisian postgame say, "Oh, well, it was close going into the fourth quarter." Brother, it was close in the score. It was not close in the stat sheet. Not at all. They kicked your ass to Timbuktu. You had no offensive identity. You ran away from the football. You quite literally dismembered your rushing attack and said, screw it, we're just going to throw the football a million times. You had too many bad drop passes. You were far too inconsistent when it came to pass protection. You have the second most penalties in college football. And in the biggest primetime spots, you have shit the bed. No. You are not going to the playoff this year. You don't belong in the playoff conversation. I will listen to an argument for a 9-3 Oklahoma over a 9-3 Texas, despite them having a head-to-head. Because if you just don't know how to capitalize in these big-time games. And also, hey, Steve Sarkisian, Kirby Smart coach circles around your ass. Time to go ahead and make some adjustments.
Is that all of our SEC teams?
I mean, I guess Vanderbilt, if you really want to, real fast.
Vandy was all. We'll save it. The only thing I'll ask, just one word, yes or no, is Ole Miss a national championship contender?
Depends on the path. It depends on the path. Penn State, as an example, last year, easiest path and made it all the way to the college football playoff semifinal and lost in a close game against Notre Dame. I think Ole Miss, their season ends in the semifinal, but crazy stuff happens.
I will go yes, just simply because of all it takes is one good bracket for you to go on the run. That's it. Now, again, any bracket? Probably not. But one good one? Why the hell not?
I'm going no. I don't think they have that killer instinct, and I think they've shown that too often. I don't think they can do it 3 straight times. So I will go no, but I do hear you guys' arguments. The bracket is going to matter. The path will absolutely matter. I think they're going to be a little lower than I expected. I think Georgia's win jumps them up a little bit. I think Texas Tech is going to stay above. I think Ole Miss, instead of getting that 5 spot we talked about, I think Ole Miss might finish with like the 7 spot, which would be like playing number 10, which would be Notre Dame first round. Like that could get way tougher for them. Or it could be Alabama first round if Alabama finishes at 10. So
they could also be the number 6 seed and get the ACC represented with Virginia.
Yeah. I think the path is very important there. So you guys are correct. I'm still going with no. Suck it, Lane. He
doesn't want Florida State, so screw him. We don't care.
Dude, why are we not being mentioned? So, all right, the Power 2. We'll be back on Wednesday. The comments were great. Tune in live at noon and hang out with us again. Hit the subscribe button, and we will talk to you guys soon.